Texas Monthly.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Viva Tejano, a Texas Monthly podcast about Tejano music told by the people who make it and live it. I'm your host, JB Sauceda. This week's interview on the last episode of the season is something really special. My dad's favorite artist, one of the all-time greats of Tejano music, Little Joe. Jose Maria de Leon Hernandez, known for more than 60 years as Little Joe, has woven his career from the orquesta and Chicano soul of the 50s and 60s through the Chicano wave of the 70s, the golden age of the 80s and 90s, and into the resurgence of música mexicana today. To my mind, he's a central figure in the story of Tejano music. Though, as you'll hear, if you ask him, what he makes is better called Chicano music. Through his art, his politics, and his work in the recording industry, Little Joe has been a propulsive force in Tejano and Chicano culture. For more than 60 of those years, his partner in life and in the music business was his wife, Criselida Cantu Hernandez, the first lady of Little Joe y La Familia. She sewed the band's costumes when his career was starting and went on to become the president of their recording label. She passed away in October of last year, days before Joe's oldest sister, Lupe, passed away as well. In our conversation, Joe talks about the healing power of music in times of grief, not as an escape, but to help you confront the new reality. He's actually written some lyrics as a tribute to Criselida, and I feel so lucky to say that you'll be the first audience to hear them in this episode. Little Joe turns 85 this year. He's still playing to sold-out crowds, and as you'll hear, he's as committed as ever to his art and to carrying on the work of La Familia for its many, many fans. All right, here's my conversation with Little Joe. We'll kick things off, but I think just context for both myself and for you too is, you know, in my house growing up, there was a lot of Tejano music, like all the time. And it was Saturday mornings, it was, Saturday nights, Sunday mornings, all the above. But there was one song that was like pervasive and I feel like is always going to be the connective tissue between me and my dad, which is Las Nubes. And so, which is in a lot of ways why I'm so excited to talk to you today. But before we get into that and the bigger conversation, one of the things that we've been doing with all of the guests is showing some footage that we have from the Johnny Canales show. Whoa. So I went back into the archives with the producers and we have a clip and I want to play it for you and just kind of get your reaction, get your feedback. Tell me what you remember. Tell me, what you see.
Pistas clandestinas. Oye, Joe, y otra que sigues también de José Alfredo, ¿verdad? Porque cuando tocábamos yo y papá en las cantinas en Royston, que tenía 12 años, yo y taloneábamos por peseta.
Did you know him well?
Too well. Oh, his favorite word, mierda. Es una mierda.
Ajá, nena, yo me voy. Oye, chica, ¿pero qué tú haces? Si tú también te vas, aquí está Little Joe. You got it. Take it away. Eso.
Wow.
What does this make you think of?
How lucky and fortunate I am, man. Wow.
What about this song? Tell me about this song.
That's Jose Alfredo Jimenez. I've recorded so many of his songs. What I've done, I've taken Mexican songs, and you can't get more Mexican than Jose Alfredo. Sing them the way I feel. I was born, raised in a black neighborhood till the age of 11. So the blues, I grew up listening to the music. When you hear me perform Ella or Prieta Linda, I feel the blues. That's a completely ranchera song that Jose Alfredo, that's Mexican. And I love all his work. He was such a genius. But it was a very interesting meeting Jose Alfredo, and it was just quite an experience. So when you ask me what I feel, what I think, how blessed I am, which I really am, man. Just a really lucky, blessed guy.
I mean, before we started recording, you were talking about just the recent loss and of your wife and your two sisters, and you're able to pivot so quickly to the blessings. I mean, how are you holding up? How are you coping with the loss of so much family?
I've experienced a lot in my life. Losing my wife was really, really hard because we knew each other for 69 years. When I was 15 years old, I met her, and that's when I started my music career. And since then, she was always supporting me, and encouraging me.
Did she perform with you too?
No. She always avoided the spotlight. Wherever we went, she didn't want people to know she was my wife. She didn't like. But we were married in 1962, so this February will be 63 years. So I lost a friend, a partner, just an incredible lady that I didn't deserve. But again, I'm blessed. But it seems like some of the worst moments and the negative moments, somehow along the way, they turned to positive. I always think about the natural things in life, what's nature, and my dad told us all as kids, the sooner you accept reality, sooner you start healing. And I've had a lot of fans that come to me for advice, opinions, comforting, and that's something that I always say to them, as hard and difficult as it is, acceptance is the key here, the sooner accept reality. And I learned that from my dad, of course, always really just teaching us about life. He was a wise guy, not educated, but very wise in way of life.
There are a lot of similarities to both my parents' upbringings, but my dad's in particular in that, I know your parents, worked the fields and picked cotton and things like that, and my grandparents were the same way. And I've talked to my dad about being Chicano, being Tejano back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and he talked a lot about just this, you just keep your head down and work. And, those were tumultuous times. I mean, it was civil rights and everything else. Yeah. But to what extent do you feel like that's informed and kind of like shaped Tejano culture? Like what about that experience kind of shaped what it means to be Tejano?
Well, for one thing, identity. I traveled the Southwest where the majority of the Mexican Americans live. And San Jose, California, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and El Paso, Texas. They're all Chicanos, all the same raza, but different. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Las Nubes. That's a connecting tissue there. Mm-hmm. The music, the culture, it all comes down to who we are. We just are raised a little different. My dad, he worked for the Santa Fe Railroad for almost 30 years, but he also did all the field work and stuff. But he came from a plantation where he lived before he moved to Temple in 1939. I was born in 1940. So he was sharecropping and doing all that, Real interesting story of my dad's side. And he got to Texas in 1912. He was 8 years old. But the movement, civil rights, and my dad was always for the underdog. And, forever, wherever he could do a good deed for someone who was less fortunate. So we grew up thinking that we should help, You
I mean,
know?
that's kind of Las Nubes, right? I mean, so we have a lot of people who are listening to this, a mixture of people who know the song well, and probably just as many who don't. Explain that song to people. Like, what is it about?
Experiencing all that I did with the movimiento con la causa, with the farm workers, con César, Dolores, Huerta. And I was so influenced by what was going on in the Bay Area in California, all over California, but particularly in the Bay Area. I wanted to make a change. Latinismo was so happening in the Bay Area. Musicians from all over the world converging there, and everybody was playing Latin, wanted to play Latin, wanted to speak Spanish, and I knew I wanted to change the name Latinaires to, and my brother John and I thought for a long time, and it's La Familia, because we were La Familia, and that's such a common word that's used over and over and over, and familia, So changing the name, and I said I want to do something different musically. I'm always open to suggestions and ideas and expanding, and music is a never ending work in progress. And I've always loved the strings, the symphony. I needed a song where I could use the symphony strings, and incidentally, those are the strings of the Dallas Symphony. I thought I'm going to merge the Tejano band with the symphony strings, and I needed what I thought was this song, and I picked Las Nubes. But I never realized, or I wasn't thinking that it would have such an impact. And today, still, the song keeps growing.
Las nubes que van pasando se paran a lloviznar. Parece que se sostienen cuando a mí me oyen cantar.
Where did the idea for the song come from? I mean, I growing up, not knowing Spanish, my parents not teaching me, when I heard that song, it was like, oh man, that really fun song that all the adults dance to, is playing. And then as I got older and I started to understand the lyrics more, it was an interesting juxtaposition of this upbeat, very kind of forward-thinking, positive mentality paired with this like kind of not downtrodden, but just clouds and the rain and sort of being beaten down, and so where did that come from, and that pairing of the music and the lyrics? Like where did that originate from?
Well, I met a guy over the phone while I was in Houston doing an interview, and he called. He said he was the author of Las Nubes. He said his name was Juan Hernandez. So, that's who I credited. But later on found out that it was, I don't even remember the real author of the song. But the interesting thing that Las Nubes, why does it continue to grow really? And the lyrics, they're so profound outside of the beautiful melody and, of course, the arrangement and the strings, and you capture that feeling, and music is all about feeling, It was, ya todo se me acabó, everything's gone, no me puedo resistir, si voy a seguir sufriendo, if I'm going to keep suffering, mejor quisiera morir, I'd rather die. And I've reached that point and thought about it, here, after losing my wife and my sisters, and I've been so blessed, I've got everything, and then in a moment of, profound sorrow and grief, it crosses your mind, and people would, it's here I am admitting this to you. But I have 4 children that I don't know how things would be for me if they weren't there. They're very together, and I thought, in passing, I would hurt so many people, especially my family, if I did something stupid like that. And instead, like 8 or 10 days after losing my wife, I wrote a song because, I mean, it was, the hurt, the sorrow is so deep and it's so dark. And I'll tell you the lyrics now if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I know that nothing is forever except the love I have for you. 'Cause when the angels came that morning, you took my heart and soul with you. Don't know how to live without you, 'cause without you nothing's true. If we had our lives to live again, it would still be me and you. And I'm missing you, Griselida, and I don't know what to do. If there is an afterlife, my eternity's with you. You comfort me through all my sorrows. You gave me hope when I had none. It was your strength that kept me going. You never let me hit the ground. And I'm missing you, Griselida. So out of that deep darkness, that song was born. You know, and not to compare with Las Nubes, but Las Nubes is about, like you said, downtrodden and, you know, the feeling of giving up, but then the clouds come, and I relate to that because when we're out in the fields and it would get cloudy and then we'd get some rain, you know, today I love walking in the rain, you know, if it's not cold. I love just jogging and running out in the rain, and that reminds me of as a kid working the fields and rain would just come and cool us all off. And Las Nubes is about that.
I feel like the relationship with pain, I mean, this is common in blues, this is common in country music, just this theme, this concept of like acknowledging the reality just is really helpful, I think, in suffering.
The
right?
acceptance. The acceptance, the reality.
It's common in Tejano music too. I mean, it feels like so much of the music is really, I mean, even the upbeat ones that are like full on. I mean, Mas, I think about like how many of their songs that my mom and dad would get up and be ready to dance, and you're like, wow, those lyrics are actually really dark, you know. And it feels like it's a pretty common thing, but it's not like a really sad George Jones song. It is upbeat, and you're like, I want to dance, you know. And like, why is that?
Again, experiencing from the stage, looking at the audience, they are crying, they're singing, you know, they're standing there, and you know, it's emotion, you know. And I'm not at all the talent that I'm credited for, and it's like I'm not.
Why do you feel that way?
Because I know me. I know my limitations. I think, you know, it's like. I'm not a songwriter, although I've written over 100 songs, and those songs come from different inspirations. I come from the cotton fields, man, and I'm downtown London, and I get off these double-decker buses, and I look around, and I see lovers everywhere, feel the magic in the air, but my heart is still with you. People chatting here and there on a crowded avenue, but my heart is still with you. You know, those. That's inspiration right there on the spot, you know. That's a jazz tune. I love jazz. If I could be good at it, that's what I'd be doing, mostly. but the trick in this, the gift, I believe, it's reaching the soul, touching the soul of the people. That's what it's really all about. It's the lyrics, it's a melody, and even the arrangement. But it's conveying from one soul to the other. That's the connection there. And then you have artists that are there forever. The Tony Bennett's, the Frank Sinatra's, Met Monroe's, and Ella Fitzgerald, and all those greats. they were there till the end, Willie. Mm-hmm. It's a great example of touching the soul, reaching the soul. You know, that's magic. Mm-hmm. And that is the difference between just being an artist or someone that can heal. Music does that. Mm-hmm. I keep saying I'm blessed because I know I am. Because through all the ups and downs, I have an incredible fan base, loyal fan base. I've been touring for 63 years, all over Japan, all over Europe, all over the United States, parts of Mexico. I love people, and some have been there watching me perform for over 60 years.
I'm telling you, I texted my dad this morning, and he immediately, I'm going to show you right now, immediately texted me back with your Live at the Schlitz album. That, I mean, this, I got to put it in like the show notes or something for people to see this album.
Usted llega a su casa cansado de los problemas que encuentra en su día. Recuerde ser su amigo estimado. Come
I was going to ask you, you seem to wear a lot of velvet suits in a lot of the old YouTube videos.
I wore all kinds of crazy things, man. Robes and and spacesuits and
My dad said he played at the Texas Union at the University of Texas back in 1978. I met him at the bar before the dance. We hired him to play a fundraiser to raise money for scholarships for incoming Tejano students as part of the Chicano Business Students Association. And so
I continue to do that over and over and over. Yeah, that's something I have a responsibility, I have an obligation to do that.
I think that, the thing that a lot of people sort of forget is that so much of the kind of quote-unquote Tejano identity or Chicano identity was steeped in politics. I mean, my dad talked about it a lot. He grew up in San Benito, and he said, look, when I was a kid, you had to pay money to vote. There was an actual poll tax.
The poll tax,
that we were unable to afford because we were poor migrant workers, and so as a result, there were no Mexicanos that were in government. And it's interesting because, again, I grew up Southeast Houston, with a pretty diverse group of people. I didn't experience any of the stuff that my dad did. Yeah, a little bit of some,
it's called progress, guy.
It is progress, a lot of progress. But I think that, it was mind-blowing to me when I had one pretty serious experience of discrimination about me being Mexican. And but my dad was like, that was a pretty common thing for us. He's like, if we were driving to Chicago to go work, in the farms up there, like there were places we couldn't stop and eat.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that people don't necessarily associate that with, Tex-Mex or Tejano culture, but that was pretty common, right?
Oh, definitely. Well, my experience, my book, No Llore Chingon, I wanted to shine the light on my parents, my family, because for me to talk about my experiences in terms of segregation and racism and, all the good old things that this country has to offer to some folks. I went through that, and and it's so unfortunate. It's so there now, and at this time, the country's so divided. The greed, the hate, the racism, it's so prevalent, so much there. And my experience on the road, many times slept in parks, in the car, whatever we were traveling in. A lot of motels, when they're not even hotels, restaurants. I always had black musicians in the band, and white, but with the black musicians, we weren't allowed or served, even in Mexican restaurants around West Texas. We'll serve you, but not him, or them, bring it around the back, and we'll. So, I'd get up and leave and forget staying at motels. I didn't understand it when I was a real young kid, but we were out in West Texas during the picking cotton season, and you go into a store and you're invisible, and you're in line and people just walk up and move you aside or get in front of you like you're not there. I mean, but that still happens, and it's unfortunate because I can almost smell it. It's so bad, but it's there. And what's unfortunate is the reality that so many of the young Tejanos, Chicanos, are not aware of who they are or what their parents had to go through to establish some opportunities that some of our kids are not taking advantage of.
It's a real thing that my wife's from, Mission. She was born in Del Rio, but she grew up in Mission, and it's a real topic of discussion that we bring up. It's not to say that like we want to shield our kids from that, because we don't. I want my kids to understand it, but I agree. It does feel like, every generation that progresses, you kind of lose touch with that connective tissue to the like realities of like who came before you. And assimilation is so important. This is America, you know. You should speak Spanish. It's America. It's so important, assimilating, but it's also a sacrifice. Yeah.
You give up something to gain something.
This is the thing. I mean, it's a funny joke, especially now, to be like, well, you should speak Spanish. Because now, I mean, so many non-Tejano friends of mine are like, man, I wish my kids knew Spanish. How lucky for y'all to have grown up in a Spanish household. And I was like, well, my parents chose not to teach us because they were held back. My dad was held back because he spoke Spanish. And so they chose not to teach us. Now, I don't know. I have this weird feeling about it that now there's this boomerang of like making sure you got to speak Spanish and English, which I think is great. But
more so than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, globally, we've shrunk so much. It's so important more than ever to be bilingual. If you want to succeed, two languages are better than one. But technology, to be explained in two languages, it's just important. It's needed to be. And, you're not going to stop la gente, la raza, the roaches are here, brother.
Different people over the years have, like, in my perception, had a lot of infighting about what is and what isn't Tejano music. But I'm here listening to you talk about how at some point, you're working on a song and you're like, oh, you know what? It'd be really fun to bring in the Dallas, string section and incorporate that into my music. And you just decided to do this thing that is now very squarely and very, easily defined as part of the Tejano umbrella. Like, do you feel like the term of Tejano got more restrictive with time? What do you think the title or the identity of Tejano has been or is?
Well, my music I've called, before the term Tejano was around, I call my music Chicano, música chicana, and it's funny because people come and tell me, no, you're this. And, oh, wait a minute, I put this thing together. I think I know what it is.
Do you still refer to it as
yes,
Chicano
music,
Yeah.
Mexican-American in two languages, and from different cultures,
Do you see it as different than Tejano?
Oh, yeah, if you point to Tejano. Now, when we first started touring in the 60s to California, and the DJs, the radio DJs there, would say, ahí vienen los Tejanos with their music. And that's where Tejano music started. I was the first one to merge with a major label.
So you feel like it was really actually the other states that kind of defined it as Tejano?
Well, that's what in California, and not so much throughout the Southwest, but California for sure, which is such a huge market for this music, or was. So that term it was used, música tejana. There is a uniqueness about our music for the Chicanos that, like myself, grew up digging the blues and jazz and country. But in Texas, we were able to get it from the Bohemians, which I picked cotton for, and they had their music, and the Czechs. Blacks and all this, you merge all that music and you come up with música chicana. Mexican-American music, as I call it, two cultures, two languages. But going out of state, like California, was more, the Chicanos are more Mexicanized, if that makes the mariachi and, that cultura is so prevalent there. But they have some great Chicano, or what you want to call Tejano bands throughout the Southwest, But if you weren't from Texas, you weren't considered Tejano. But the music, that has no boundaries,
But it feels like the nuance and the semantics around the titles has been more of a problem, or more of like it's almost been like just a bunch of wires on the ground to trip over, right? Like I remember getting involved with the Tejano Music Coalition here in Austin, and there were just these conversations and disagreements back and forth about what should and shouldn't be at this baile, and I was like, can't we just be pumped that there's like a place that we're going that's going to be playing this music? We're complaining about it not being on the radio, but we can't even agree what we'd want on the radio.
We're so fractured.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Chicanos. We love all musics. The blues, the mariachi, the accordion, everything. And I mix it all in, it's the same salad. I just tossed it, over and over. But I just have to play that variety. And that's why for me it's always been Chicano. When they termed it Tejano, it's like, well, what's Tejano? Well, it depends on who you ask. And when did it start? In the 60s or the 90s or last year? Or
I mean, I remember being really proud of listening to Redneck Meskin Boy, which for anyone who's not aware of the track is spelled Meskin in the title. And I loved it because when you're singing that song and talking about, knowing Waylon and Willie and all this stuff, it's almost like this, when you go somewhere and you realize two friends that you really like know each other. And I remember hearing that song as a kid and going like, whoa, he knows those people that we listen to on like that part of the day, and there was this overlap. But this concept of going country is not really new, right? I mean, that's always been part of Tejano music in a way, or Chicano music, and the melding of
For those of us that like the variety, yeah. I mean, how could you not appreciate and love Ray Price, man? I mean, it just country, but that's, you could say maybe sophisticated country.
Well, shoot, he's number one kind of victim of that, right? Like too cosmopolitan, and some people don't consider him country because of his style of. Well, I love Ray Price. I mean, for the good times. Talk about crying. I'll cry listening to that song.
Oh yeah, and I love the song "Never Sang," but Ray Price is such a beautiful person. I met him. We were doing, my brother, back to politics, was they were pirating the records, the 16 tracks or cassettes, whatever it was back then, and Governor Preston Smith, I believe, signed it into law about pirating, trying to save the market, and Ray Price was there for that signing, and we have pictures of the governor and my brothers and Ray, and I remember getting introduced to Ray Price, and the guy that was working with my brother introduced me to Ray. He says, "Ray, this is Little Joe, man, the number one Chicano singer." And Ray looked at me, "No, man, I'm the number one Chicano singer." But yeah, how can you not love something like country? But then again, there's always going to be, I mean, that's the beauty of people. Some will say that's country, some say it's not, some don't know, but they think they do, and hey, that's cool, you know. I am whatever you think I am, because don't bother me. I know who I am and what I am. And it's like, what's Tejano? Well, who told you that was Tejano, you know? In my case, I think it's fair for me to call my music what I want since I'm creating it, producing it. If I say Chicano, take my word. This is my salad. I'm creating this thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Who gives a damn? Just listen to it and just play it, right?
Yeah, as long as I like it.
Yeah.
And I like it all, so who cares, you know? I'll be at the Harris Resort Casino in Laughlin for Valentine's Day. Show's been sold out. It's been sold out for the last 3 weeks or so.
How does that make you feel? I mean, you're 85?
I'll be 85 in October.
You're selling out venues, playing songs that you recorded.
Well, I went from picking cotton to picking guitars to picking pockets, and I found out I'm a good pocket picker. No, but again, these people, it's not just the music, but it's the memories, it's the story, it's the history that's attached to the songs. I've recorded over 70 albums. If you say times 10, that's 700 songs over that, you know. But I've been at it. I've been recording since 1960. My first recording was in Corpus Christi. It was an instrumental. It was the guitars in 1958. And I've been at it ever since, you know. And again, it's for the people. It's for the audience. And you and your dad, Las Nubes, there's a connection there.
I mean, I grew up around a lot of other white kids and stuff, and my girlfriends were all white. And in college, my now wife and I met, and it was like there were these common experiences we both had. We both had very similar upbringing, similar Tejano households. And part of it, I felt like these calling cards or this connective tissue were your mom also pinched you in church, or, oh, your dad also did this, or your granddad did, you know, whatever. And I feel like that's this generational cultural thing that her and I have. And so for me, the music is such a fascinating time capsule, much like realizing someone grew up in your hometown and having something to connect with them on. I think music does act as this secret handshake.
Weekly, I do videos for congratulations, anniversary, or even condolences, somebody passing, or somebody in the hospitals. And, you know, it's such a little thing for me to do, but it means so much to the people. You know, I hear some incredible stories that their last wishes is to come to the show. You know, they come in wheelchairs, and they, you know, Joe, thank you. You made my dad or my sister or my cousin or aunt happy for their last days. The music, the connection, but you put your finger on it about la cultura, nuestra gente. It's not just the music. Again, it's about who we are, you know, and we need to know and understand that, and the sooner we do, the better off we are. But again, the price of assimilating. But there's no progress without sacrifice.
And I feel the same way. I love this uniquely brown and proud component of me, paired with the very, you know, kind of West Texas cowboy stuff that I'm into. I mean, it's like this total melting pot in a different way, you know. My kids, I'll play the oldies music that my dad listened to, and they're like, really, Dad, this playlist? But, like, that's part of my identity, too, right? Like, listening to the Supremes. And
oh, yeah. Well, you're getting to the cream of the crop stuff there. But the other thing, the wealth and the melting pot is the experience of it. I mean, what would I be if I hadn't experienced the opera? Or B.B. King, you know, or José Alfredo Jiménez.
Yo sé bien que estoy afuera,
Pero el día que yo me muera, sé que tendrás que llorar. Llorar y llorar, llorar y llorar. Dirás que no me quisiste, pero vas a estar muy triste y así te vas a quedar.
If my parents had moved to China and I was born in China, I'd still be the Mexican I am. You know, I'm very proud of my race, my culture, my family, my people. But we should be proud of everyone, everybody's culture. And music is that little strand, that string, that tissue that connects us all, because music is about the heart, it's about the soul, it's about our experience, about who we are, you know. When my dad went to prison for marijuana, that's when I really had to grow up. At 15, I was in charge of my, I think, 6 siblings at home. And it's some hard times. Music got me through that, man. It was just, you know, music's been an incredible vehicle for me. And back to Las Nubes, as you get older, you appreciate and understand the lyrics more and more. And that's another, you know, blessing for me. It's kept me, I guess, healthy in one way. And I always look for tomorrow, because I can do something good for somebody, and that's because of music. So it's such an incredible instrument to use for relating, and I don't know where I'd be without music. I just, you know, I know I'm at the end. I'm on the right near the goal line now, you know. And I
That's
know
the epitome of acknowledging your reality.
Yeah, I got like maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and the last quarter, man. But all in all, it's been a great game. You know, it's been just a blessing, and the people that music's brought me in contact with, and the friendships that, you know, from all over, you know, all kinds of people, and it's something that I wish more people would experience, but since they can't, I try to share that through music.
Well, you know, for mine and my dad's sake, I hope we're not quite at the finish line. You know.
Again, man, I've been so blessed. It's just been so fortunate to have been born into the family that I was born. So proud of all my siblings and all my family. I really want to thank you for this. Has done me good. I needed to do this. It's the first time I sang my wife's song. It took me forever. I couldn't get through. Almost broke down again. But
thank you for sharing it.
This is soul healing for me. You know, because it's last thing on my mind when I go to sleep, before I go to sleep, is Chris in the morning, even during the night. I didn't know. I knew it would be a big impact. I just didn't know how big of an impact it would have on me. And I want to tell the world that those of you that have your spouses should really, really get closer. And every day is so precious. And because one day it's over, and you don't want to have a feeling of I should have more, you know. But not just your spouses, your friends, your family. Everybody should just appreciate, love one another. Love's free, man.
Why the heck am I here looking country with a gringo named like Little Joe? Boots and spurs and blue jeans just like Waylon. Compadre, there is something you should know.
All right, was my conversation with Little Joe. Thanks so much to him for joining me in the Texas Monthly studio, and thanks to all of y'all for listening and all of the support. This podcast started as a bit of a side quest, a Slack message asking if I knew who Johnny Canales was. Well, I'm glad that I answered with such an emphatic yes, because I had the pleasure of spending the next handful of months revisiting my childhood, chatting with people I'd only ever seen on TV or listened to on the radio. And I did so with the amazing support of all of you and the production crew, Ella, Patrick, Brian, Aisling, and Megan. So, thanks again. In the words of Freddie Fender, vaya con Dios. Adios. Viva Tejano is a Texas Monthly podcast hosted by me, JD Salceda. Our executive producer is Megan Kreit. The show is produced by Ella Kapakin and Patrick Michaels and produced and engineered by Brian Standifer. Additional production by Aisling Ayers. Consulting producer is Adrian Arredondo. A huge thanks to our partners, Mirna Perez and Adrian Arredondo, for access to the Johnny Canales Show archives. Keep an eye out for the upcoming documentary, Take It Away, which chronicles the rise and fall of Tejano Hollywood. Artwork is by Jen Hare-Tompkins and Victoria Milner. Thank you all for listening. Adios.
Es todo, brother.
That nice. That real nice. I like that. Who said that? Who said that? Who said that?